If the lighting industry has a godfather, his name is William M. Brown. The quintessential American story. Born of immigrants, raised in Chicago during the Great Depression, Bill Brown rose to become the most powerful man in the lighting business. You can disagree with me on that if you want. But if you do, I think you should sleep with the fishes. Come on, man. 89 years young, sharp as a tack, business card in hand, and order pad ready. Mr. Brown conquered this game. I hope you like his podcast. And remember, this is the official podcast of the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Visit NAILD.org, that's nailed.org, for information on joining the association or getting in touch with some fantastic educational products we've developed over the last 10 years. This podcast is sponsored by some friends of mine over at Keystone Technologies. They should become friends of yours, especially if you're a lighting distributor. Since the Second World War, Keystone Technologies has been cranking out quality lighting products. Now, you guys know that I love companies that have been in this game for a long time, and Keystone has. But not many companies have made the transition to LED as smoothly as they have. For true, bro, Keystone is legit. And they want me to tell you about their ballast bypass T5HE and T5HO line voltage LED tube replacements. We can argue about T8 bypass versus ballast compatible or whatever. But when it comes to T5, there's just too many incompatible ballasts out there. On top of that, the ballasts are really expensive. And the fixtures already have the unshunted sockets you need. Just take that line voltage, slam it into the unshunted sockets, and Bob's your uncle. Visit KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Or email them at t5@KeystoneTech.com. So without further ado, I give you William M. Brown. Bill Brown. That's Mr. Brown to you on episode 10 of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, Mr. Brown.
Thank you very much for having me.
Say hello to my co-host, Greg Eric.
Yeah, Greg, how are you?
Good, Mr. Brown. Thanks for being here.
Have you ever done a podcast before, Mr. Brown?
No.
Are you nervous?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit nervous too when I start. I always feel like you never know where it's going to go, and you're hoping that we're going to be entertaining and to our listeners.
I'm hoping you'll ask me the right questions.
Well, are you
That's
a
our
born
plan.
American, Mr. Brown?
Yes, I am.
Where were you born?
Chicago, Illinois.
So you're born and raised here?
Yes, sir.
Were your parents Americans?
No.
Where are they from?
Ukraine.
They're from the Ukraine. And when did they immigrate to the United States?
I think in the late 1915 to 1920 era.
After the First World War or during the First World War?
I think it was after the First World War, actually. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And were they married when they came over?
No, they met learning English in school.
Wow. And they were both from the Ukraine, though?
They're both from the Ukraine. My father was from Odessa, and my mother was from near Kiev.
Did they speak Ukrainian in the home?
They did. They spoke Russian.
Russian. So were they Russian Ukrainians or were they?
I think it was part of the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic.
Yeah,
My father also spoke Polish, so I'm not sure exactly. But he was near that Russian or the Ukrainian-Polish border.
Yeah, the borders in Europe have moved around a lot, an awful lot. And actually there was I'm a bit of I like war history. I wouldn't say I'm a buff, but I know that there's a little known war between the Ukraine and Poland that took place after the First World War. So it was a war between the borders of Ukraine because my father-in-law is Polish. So you grew up in Chicago. What did your dad do?
Well, my father started out as a painter because he didn't have English skills. So he painted.
He
He was a
painted.
painting contractor, and eventually evolved. He used to go to, he told us, to go to a liquor store and buy a vodka to clear the paint out of his lungs. And the owner one day said to him, listen, you know, you're only working during the day. I need somebody that I could work with in the evening. And so after work, why don't you come and work with me? And that man got sick and passed away. And the wife said to my father, listen, I can't handle it. Maybe you can take it over. And my father said, how will I pay you? She said, you'll pay me as you go. So my father said that was the first break that he really got, because he then went into the liquor business and was very successful.
So he became an entrepreneur.
Yes, he was an entrepreneur.
Was he an entrepreneur in the Ukraine before he left?
No, my father was the youngest of 17 children.
Wow.
It was an Orthodox Jewish family, and their mantra was to go forth and multiply. And then my grandfather, who I never met, encouraged them to leave because they were being oppressed by the Tsar, and it felt that it was important for them to get out. And so 10 of the children eventually made it to the United States.
Now, what was the liquor business that your father started?
North Avenue in Sedgwick, it's here in Chicago. And it was a packaged liquor business, and we moved upstairs. And so it was an easy commute to go downstairs. And my first experience was lugging cases of beer from downstairs where it was cold up to the main level where the liquor was stored. We used to serve beer. They'd put food on the table, so when you went in to have a drink, you could actually have a dinner as well.
And is that business is still active?
No,
Okay.
no. My father's been gone. I'm a very senior citizen. I'm sure I'm one of the oldest you've ever done an interview with.
Did he own this business during Prohibition?
No, mm-mm.
It was after Prohibition?
It was after Prohibition. It was in the I'd say the late 30s, early 40s. We had problems getting liquor those days because of the war, Second World War. And my father used to go out and buy other liquor companies out because they couldn't get enough liquor to support their program. And that's how he stayed alive during that Second World War.
How did you come about to have the last name Brown?
My father was vehement about wanting to be an American. As the youngest child, he had an older sister, smuggled him out in a hay wagon. They went to Warsaw, Poland, waited 6 months in Warsaw, Poland to try and get in, and then couldn't. So they went to Havana, Cuba, and they waited 2 years. So my father spoke Russian, Polish, Spanish, and Yiddish before he ever spoke English.
And so when he came here, did he anglicize a Ukrainian name?
Yes.
So that's an old American way of. A lot of people did that, I think.
I think they did, to make it easier and shorter and more. And Bill Brown, what more American name can you have?
It's pretty American.
That's right.
Yeah, it sounds pretty American to me. So you grew up in an entrepreneurial environment then?
I would suggest that I did. I was always working. I was born in 1928, and the big depression occurred in the 30s. So I've always been working. I always felt that I had to contribute something to the family. And as I think people will tell you, I have a very strong work ethic.
You know, it's so as a young child, you felt like you wanted to help out.
Oh yes. I worked in a little pharmacy, and I didn't get paid. Hopefully, if I delivered something, that somebody would give me a tip. And it was during the Depression. Many people could only give you a thank you. They just didn't have anything to give you. So, but I've delivered newspapers. I've shined shoes. I've done almost everything along the way that to give me an empathy. I waited tables. So I'm very empathetic to people who work for a living.
So you did that, and then did you attend all throughout high school and then college at all?
Oh, yeah. I went to Darwin Grammar School, Roosevelt High School, Roosevelt University, and then Northwestern University. Did my graduate work there.
What did you study?
Eventually marketing and sales, but I have an undergraduate degree in industrial engineering.
So the story's starting to come together now. So how did it happen that you got into the lighting business, Mr. Brown?
Well, I was planning to get married to this lovely lady that I've been married to for 67 plus years. And the thought occurred to me, how was I going to support her? So I went to a job program at the Roosevelt University, and a Harry Maurer and Associates was recruiting a trainee, if you would, for a lighting company. And so they selected me to become part of that training program, a company called House of Light Corporation at 1100 West Washington Boulevard here in Chicago.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I used to get there early enough so that the owners weren't there, and I'd be standing around waiting for them to come in. And one day, one of the owners came to me and said, "Here's the key to the place. You're here early, and I don't want you to wait outside during the winter." And I treated it as if it was my own, without trying to be disrespectful to the owners or anything like that. And I just enjoyed every facet of the business, including, paper. We used to pay people to haul away paper. And in those days, you could sell the paper. So I got them to put it together in bundles. And instead of, paying other people, we sold and made money selling paper. But there were so many things so basic that I couldn't understand. These people were not doing. They didn't have a system of knowing how to their suppliers and grading them. So that when I came in and started putting together folders of how to buy product and compare pricing and figure out which one was really the real value, it was amazing. And I thought it was doing things normally, and they were just amazed at my ability to sort things out and give them an answer that they could understand.
Was it a lighting distributorship?
No, lighting only. It was an assembler of fluorescent manufacturing.
They made fluorescent tubes?
No,
Fixtures.
They made fixtures.
Oh.
They bought their tubes from GE, Westinghouse at the time before Philips, and of course Sylvania was on the scene too.
And what year was that you started there?
I started in 1950.
And then you worked there for how long?
For 5 years. And during those 5 years, they encouraged me by giving me the ability to go and get an education, which I wanted to do in marketing and sales. And then when I got through with getting my degree, I asked them, I'd like to be in marketing and sales to use my newfound skills that they had financed. And they said, "Well, you're too good at paperwork, man, to lose you in that area." And I said, "Well, then perhaps I have to find another position," which I did.
The system of grading suppliers, is that something that you've kept with you for your whole career?
Well, I've really focused on marketing and sales, and my first 17 years in business, from 1955 to 1972, was as Bill Brown Sales. And then I really developed a very successful sales agency, and 3 of my major people literally fired me for being too successful. They had a little recession in 1972, and they said, "Gee, with what we're paying you, we can finance our own salespeople," forgetting that the lighting business is relationships. And when you're dealing with people, they want to know that you're honest, that you're sincere, that you're going to be there after the sale is over if there's a problem. And as a result, it led me to start a company called ALP. America's Lighting Professionals was the big impressive name we shortened it to ALP because it really was easier to say and do.
So in 1955, you started Bill Brown Sales.
Right.
And how did you start it? What was the first move? That's a long one.
That's an interesting story. There was a company here in Chicago by the name of Canning Pereira. And Canning Pereira was a supplier of standard bodies only for the lighting industry in the Chicago and surrounding areas. And he had a problem with a customer called Triangle Electric down in Miami, Florida. So he heard that I was available. I was no longer with Household. And he asked me if I would go down there and resolve the problem for him with this Triangle Electric. And I said, well, what's the deal? He said, well, I'll pay for your flight down, and then I'll give you a flat fee. I think it was maybe $300. It wasn't a big deal.
Sure.
To solve this problem. And so I said, thank you very much. He gave me the tickets. I ran to the airport and cashed them in, got in my station wagon and drove down to Miami because I could do that less expensively. And went to this Triangle Electric and soon discovered it was really a misunderstanding or miscommunication between the Canning Pereira and these folks. And they were so delighted I resolved the problem. They gave me a check for the entire truckload they purchased and gave me a new order,
Wow.
which I drove back from Florida to Chicago, making sales calls along the way. And there was an interesting company that had begun just about that time called Lithonia Lighting. And I made a sales call on Lithonia Lighting and met with Judd McIntosh, who was the engineering brains of Lithonia Lighting. And we've been doing business with Lithonia a la Acuity Brands Lighting ever since.
And that was Bill Brown Sales that was doing
That was Bill Brown Sales, humble beginnings.
Now, you said that they kicked you out for being too successful. Can you dive into that story a little bit more? What happened?
Well, you work as a commission agent. So you don't get paid anything. You take care of all of your own expenses. But the advantage is that if you are successful as a salesperson and you start the sale and customers buy from you on a repeat basis, pretty soon the dollars begin to commute pretty well. And I was there at the very beginning, pretty much with fluorescence. And so I was fortunate with my timing and with some of the manufacturers that I represent that these customers needed product, and I was there to supply product. And my volume got to be very substantial.
Is that like sockets and wire nuts and stuff like that?
Not wire nuts, but sockets, fluorescent sockets. I had a fluorescent socket line. I had Atom Metal Products, which I still represent to this day, which is a long time. Housings, metal housings, plastic lenses. In fact, the companies that, and by the way, none of them are in the lighting business anymore, but Sheffield Plastics, which has been purchased by Bayer, is now a supplier of material. American Louver, they used to injection mold louvers and lenses. They're no longer in the lighting business either. And the third company was Aluminum Louver Corporation, which also went out of business shortly after.
Now, did they leave you and start their own sales agency, these three guys?
No, they didn't start their own sales. They put their own salespeople in. I see. And they just couldn't sustain. They just didn't have the rapport with the customers. And I, thank goodness, I have been able to sustain that.
So forgive me for kind of slowing it down a little. I just want to make sure I totally understand. So in 1955, you were representing to 1972 multiple factories.
They still do.
And that one makes sockets, one makes housings, one makes lenses.
Right.
And then you pile them all together. Then you'd go to Lithonia or someone like
Well,
that?
they would buy some of the products from me. Many of the products they make on their own. But there are parts and pieces that we do that nobody else does.
How did you get into manufacturing?
Great difficulty. One of my competitors, believe it or not, came to me and said, "Look, you've got a tremendous reputation with the customers. Why don't you buy the product from us and sell it under your own name? So you'll pay us, and then you'll sell whatever you need to sell to the customers."
Like a private label arrangement?
It was a completely private label arrangement. And believe it or not, I was able to bring them into customers that they couldn't get on their own.
And then
I got so successful with that they decided to sell me too, which led me to starting to manufacture our own.
And you mean they sold the business to you?
No, they didn't sell the business to me. We created and bought other businesses that eventually did that.
Which was the first one you created on your own?
Well, the first thing I was doing was lenses. Flat prismatic lenses was a staple for any fluorescent fixture manufacturer. And so the name of the company was Carolite, that said, "Why don't you buy from us and resell it?" And that's how I did that.
Were these factories located in Chicago or all over?
No. They were located, the factories themselves were located wherever they were located. Carolite, I think, was in California when I started buying lenses from them. And they were just amazed that I could sell product that their customers couldn't get access to.
What do you think is the Bill Brown secret? What's the secret sauce, Mr. Brown?
You know what? There's no secret sauce. It's working hard. For many, many years, I worked 6 and 7 days a week. I'd come back. We always worked on Saturdays because I was on the road during the week. So Saturday was my day of follow-up and getting things through. And then I'd get on the road on Sunday and go back out and make sales calls. And it was interesting because many of my competitors used to fly, and I used to beat them because I'd be driving right after I left the call to the next account before they could get to the airport, get the transportation, rent a car. So my cost was extremely low compared to theirs. And so I did well.
What did you drive?
Oh, I used to have a Plymouth station wagon to start with. And I slept in it. I used to have a mattress in it so I didn't have to pay for the hotel room, which I couldn't afford.
Oh,
So I've done it all.
So you're bootstrapping it.
Yeah.
Wow. So I think there is a secret there. I think it's work hard and talk to people and do what you say you're going to do.
Well, I think, integrity is an important part of any relationship. If you treat people like you want to be treated, I think they will respond in a very positive way. And many of the customers that I used to call on became friends. It wasn't a sales call. It was a, "How are you doing? What's going on? How can I help?" type of approach. And that really led me to some of the product developments. People would say, "I need this kind of product," and I'd actually go out and find a product to resolve their needs.
And that's how you grew your line, I guess.
Exactly.
Solving problems for people.
I think gasket enclosures were appropriate. There was a German manufacturer that was supplying imported product here to the United States. And I met them actually in Tupelo, Mississippi, when I was calling on a customer there. And they said, "Well, why can't we can't get to the smaller accounts. Why don't you buy from us and redistribute it?" So I started buying gasket enclosures from them and in container quantities and redistributing them under the ALP name. And I still sell gasket enclosures to this very day, except that I manufacture them now in Mexico with my own tools. I gradually brought the volume, got so big that I couldn't handle it from them. And so we do it today, and we're one of the major suppliers of gasket enclosures. And North America.
You're talking vapor tight fixtures,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically two housings. Is it
No,
your?
it's more than two housings today because now we've got an LED housing, we've got an injection molding, we do compression molding. There's a whole variety of products that have evolved out of those basic units that we used to import.
As far as a supply of it, isn't it SLP and ALP, and that's it.
No,
That makes it.
SLP came long after we were in the marketplace, and they were injection molders, and so they started to injection mold while we were compression molding. But now we bought an injection molder back in 2007. We bought Lexolite, so we now have the ability to injection mold, and we do. We have a product line that's completely injection molded that we think is the finest in the industry.
When you started out in 1955, was that the beginning of a sort of fluorescent changeover from incandescent, or at that time was
Yes.
fluorescent new?
Yes, fluorescents were fairly new, and companies were learning that they could assemble product and distribute product. And Housolite was an offshoot of a company called Mitchell Manufacturing Company.
Okay.
And Mitchell was a vertical manufacturer. They actually bent their own steel, and one of the owners of Housolite, Eli Winkle, he literally came from Mitchell, and he worked with a fellow by the name of Jack Stone, who was a retrofit manufacturer. And they put together a new company called Housolite, which was an assembler of fluorescent lighting fixtures.
And that's the company you worked for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so is there any similarities that you see between the adoption of fluorescent lighting back then and the adoption of LED lighting today?
There's a lot of similarities, except for the fact that LEDs are an electronic product, and as a result, the electronic people are moving a lot faster than the fluorescent people did. And as a result, it's caused a complete disruption in the industry.
Are you feeling that disruption at Bill Brown's house?
Yes.
Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? Some up, some down?
Well, the positive is that everybody is changing over from fluorescents to LEDs, and as they change over, there's a retrofit opportunity there. The negative is that it's completely obsoleted some of the equipment that we use for manufacturing fluorescent housings, and we have to replace that. We have to replace all of the tooling, and the tooling changes are happening so quickly that we can't amortize our cost of doing the tooling because we don't sell anything complete directly. Everything we do is through the OEM channels.
So then your customers are being disrupted significantly.
Oh, yes.
And some of them are struggling, I think, with the adoption of LED technology.
I think that's correct.
We were talking with Mark and Randy about this for a bit. And so we've been selling light bulbs I've been selling light bulbs for 17 years. Okay, so to end user accounts. And I think a lot of traditional lighting guys were very slow toe in the water with LED. And I think a lot of companies moved in to that opportunity and are now very strong in that space where they weren't there 5 or 6 or 10 years ago.
I'm not sure. I think what happened is that China has had a huge impact on the marketplace because the folks in China are encouraged by their government to export. And in many cases, the Chinese government has created many of these manufacturing people by literally supporting them financially. And so as a result, there's a lot of product being made in China at very low costs. They have a value-added tax internally, and externally they don't. So as a result, they actually are exporting product cheaper here than they do in their own country.
And are there, when people, I'm not going to say any names, but various presidents are saying unfair trade practices, do you think that's true?
I absolutely do.
Do you think that we should have let China into the World Trade Organization?
Wow. I haven't given that much thought. I think I really don't know the answer to that.
You know, it's funny because I heard a report once, I don't know if it's true, but there used to be a GE fluorescent lamp manufacturing company in Oakville. I don't know if you sold products to them or not, but they made fluorescent tubes there. And I was told when they were shutting that factory down and moving it to, I think it's in, where is the GE lamp factory now, Greg?
In Ohio?
I think it's in Ohio, yeah.
I don't know the name of the city.
And the guy was telling me that they couldn't shut the factory down, though, because the 4-foot fluorescent tube is a militarily strategic lamp for the United States. And that if you couldn't make that tube, you'd be at a disadvantage to other countries. Has America lost the lighting business war with China, so to speak? I don't even want to use the word war, but have we lost it? Have we given our lighting business over to them in a way?
I suspect we have. I think the Chinese have been very aggressive in making changes. Their tooling costs are far less than ours. And, we have a strategic dilemma. There's a popular support for raising the minimum wage, which socially I feel positive about. At the same time, in order to compete with China, you have to literally take your plants, which we have been doing, and put them on a very strict discipline to reduce costs. And so we employ a lot less people today than we used to, simply in order to be competitive. We have a number of robots that we've brought in, be able to replace the labor cost, not because we want to do it. We want to do everything efficiently, but we've been forced to reduce costs, and our largest cost is labor.
You're not being insensitive about it. I get that.
Right.
It's
a real issue.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you want to see your middle class grow. That's how you maintain a stable society. And at the same time, how do you do that and fight corn competition that average rate is about $1 or $2 an hour, where yours is going up?
Greg and I did a tour of China in 2014, and we went to 10 factories. Maybe a couple more.
You were in Shenzhen?
We were in Shanghai and Shenzhen, yeah, and Hong Kong for a bit. And we took a look around. And the scope of Chinese manufacturing is something I don't think people in North America really understand. Like how many people they can deploy into a factory. I think the one we went to was 6,000 people work there.
Yeah, and they live there.
They provide the housing for them.
Yeah, and they eat
which
there.
Which is part of their costs.
Yeah.
But the government subsidizes that. In fact, the more people you employ, the greater the support you get from the communist government.
In some ways, what the Chinese have done is really remarkable when you think about how far they've come in the last 30 years. I mean, more people have been taken out of poverty in China in the last 20 years or 30 years than anywhere else in the world ever. Like 300 million people. The population of the United States was...
I used to go twice a year to China, and I have been in some remarkable plants. I represent companies that are from China. There are some very, very fine companies in China.
What should the United States do then? Let's say using lighting as an example, and we want to remain competitive, but we don't. I'm a Canadian. I certainly get a little bit worried when I hear about American protectionism, or what was that Buy American Act? Right?
Yeah.
That's very threatening to Canadian companies in a way, because we do a lot of business across the border. But what I think I'm hearing from you is that maybe there is some protectionism that needs to happen.
It's a difficult, I'm a free enterprise guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. I do think there has to be some kind of a codification or organization that protects both sides. I think we live in a world that's shrinking, and I think we have to be able to deal with other countries in a positive way, just as they want to deal with us. And believe me when I tell you, there are good folks in China. There are good folks in the United States. And there are bad folks in China and bad folks here in the United States. So what you have to do is look at it in a positive sense and say, how can we work together to win together?
Yeah, I mean, certainly any type of conflict between, whether it's trade or otherwise, between China and America is very bad for the world.
I think
for sure.
I think so.
I think what's changed most of all, so in terms of trade relationships from the American perspective, I think America was so big and powerful for so long, and especially after the Soviet Union collapsed, that there was nobody else. It was a single world power, and now China is really challenging that, and it presents unique circumstances, I think, for America and the West in general in terms of doing business with the Chinese and how you do that.
Well, I'm a marketing and sales executive, and if you have 1.5 billion Chinese and you have 300 million Americans, if everything was equal, they would certainly outconsume us. Now, in marketing, you rate people on their ability to buy. I'm not sure how many of the 1.5 billion Chinese have the financial ability to consume product like we do, but they're getting there. And as they get there, they are capable of consuming a lot more than we are.
Well, I think that the economists would call it the U.S. economy is bigger in one way of defining it in terms of pure volume, but if you rearrange it for what they call purchasing power parity, which is where how much can someone buy or consume, the Chinese economy is already bigger than the United States economy.
I haven't looked into it, but I would suspect that's true.
Yeah, they're saying.
Although I saw a lot of empty buildings that were built in China to create jobs, that there's nobody living there. If you go between Shanghai and Hangzhou, which I do quite often, there are buildings there that nobody's ever lived in.
So,
kind of diving back into Bill Brown
lighting.
sales,
Yeah,
I want to learn
sales.
more about this. So how many different lines do you represent at Bill Brown
12,
Sales?
13.
Okay. And any of them compete in terms of what they produce?
No. One of the important things that we do is to make sure that we don't compete with each of the lines, and that we maintain our integrity and the integrity of our factories by representing people that don't compete with each other.
Now, how do ALP, is it run as a totally separate company?
Yes.
You own both of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And does Bill Brown Sales sell to ALP?
Well, I'd like him to do more, but we don't assemble fixtures, so we sell parts. And ALP is a component manufacturer, and we represent ALP as we do our other fixture lines without discrimination. So we don't try to compete with our factories that we represent, and the factories that we represent don't compete with ALP. I think they're complementary one to the other.
How many factories does ALP have?
How many plants do we have?
Yeah.
Gosh, 5 or 6.
All in you said one was in Mexico?
One is in Mexico.
And the other 4 or 5?
We have a plant in Charlevoix, Michigan, one in Dixon, Tennessee, one in Olive Branch, Mississippi, one in Atlanta, Georgia, Lithia Springs, Georgia, and one in Birmingham, England.
Do they each do something different?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all part of the same chain, but they each have their own
They're
purpose.
all component suppliers.
So, aside from doing a podcast from us, what does a week of Bill Brown working look like? What do you do? Make sales calls?
Well, I don't travel anymore. As I said, I'll be celebrating my birthday on October 7th. I'll be 89 years young.
Woo!
Congrats.
And fortunately, I'm blessed with, I think, a cogent mind. My day is to deal with our customers, longtime customers, trying to make sure that there's any weakness in our system, anybody needs help, that I'm available for it. And as I say, I really have been lucky in the sense that mentally, I really feel very sharp.
Yeah, I think you are sharp.
Yeah.
I don't. And do you still write orders?
If I'm blessed to receive one, I always have an order pad sitting on my desk.
That's
great.
And unlike the co-host of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, you bring your business cards everywhere, I'm sure.
Yes, I do. Well, I've taught at Northwestern University. I've some of the graduate courses at night. I felt that going to school at night was interesting because there were practitioners that practiced their trade, and many of the professors who don't have that direct relationship with their work become very, I think, they don't have the reality. They sometimes become extreme in what they're doing because they don't have the reality of dealing with the actual day-to-day.
Yeah, they're book smart.
What's that?
They're book smart. Book smart.
That's right. They're intellectually smart and pragmatically not as good as they should be.
It's funny because one of the reasons we started this podcast, Mr. Brown, is because we would go. Greg and I, we always say that we're in the trenches. We sell light bulbs to people every day, and they ask us questions, and we have to know the answers to these questions, and we have to help them make the right choice based on money or quality or whatever they're after. And so we've been doing this for a long time, and we would go to Light Fair, we would go to a lighting conference, and we'd listen to someone speak. And about 5 minutes in, we'd look at each other and we'd say, "You think this guy's ever sold a light bulb to anybody in his life, Greg?" And he'd say, "Nope." Because you could tell right away the people that have that street knowledge or that sales knowledge combined with the book knowledge. And when they're speaking, you can really feel that from them. I think you're right about that, Mr. Brown, that there's a huge difference.
Yes, you really have to be able to deal with your customers on a practical manner. And I used to sell some lamps. I worked for a company called Penetrate. And again, they were sellers they all sold direct to the lighting aftermarket, et cetera. And they had their bulbs made by Sylvania up in Boston at the time. And I used to get a big kick out of the fact that people just didn't understand that everything we did was a surround for the lamp. In other words, if we made a fluorescent fixture, we had to make sure that it accommodated the lamps. And the lamps were codified. So if you bought a Sylvania, a Philips, or Westinghouse it was then, or GE, all the lamps were made to a specific specification. So they all were capable of being entered.
Well, that's a massive change in this business right there, I think.
Oh, yes. Because today you buy an LED light engine and depends on the light engine how the other parts will fit.
Yeah.
Do you think there's ever going to be a way they can standardize LEDs and make it so it's more interchangeable like fluorescents were?
I think the chicken's already out of the coop, buddy.
I think so.
It could be. I'm not sure because right now we represent a very fine driver company, Inventronics. And we make a lot of different product because every LED light engine requires has a different specification. And that's a problem. And if you misfit the products together and they don't fit, it's like your car. If your car's not tuned and everything doesn't work together, you have a real problem.
Yeah. If the filter doesn't screw onto that cap perfectly,
Exactly.
It's getting more and more complicated.
Yes, it is.
Now, you've done a lot of deals in your life and contracts and things. Is there any one that stands out to you that you can recall as being the most exciting or the thing that really told you you've arrived in lighting?
I think it was evolutionary. In other words, I think that as I went, things started to get easier for me because of the fact that, number one, people knew me. And number two is that our name became a byword in the industry, B-U-Y. And so as a result, one of the things that helps us today is that Bill Brown Sales is a very respected manufacturer's representative, and ALP Lighting Components has the same integrity built into it, that we will back up our product if anything goes wrong. So if you deal with BBS or ALP, you're dealing with a company of integrity that's got, we go back to 1955, so that's somewhat of a tribute.
That's a long run.
Yeah, how many people do you have that are in the industry that have lasted that long?
Not many.
Not many. Are there any other manufacturing reps like you guys? Because Michael and I have been going to Light Fair for a number of years, and we always see your booth, and we're always been confused by
We're
it.
always like, who the heck is this Bill Brown guy?
It's everywhere.
We used to think that. Yeah.
Well, we are the largest single agent in North America. So that includes not only the United States, but Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. And so we are a known entity, and I was respected in that direction with everybody that we deal with. And some people, I don't think anybody can say that we're not honest or that we don't follow through. I think we have a lot of respect in the industry, both with our customers and with our competitors.
Now, with all the changes in lighting, what do you see as the keys to succeed in the future for lighting?
You've been through a lot of revolutions in the lighting business, Mr. Brown. What's the key?
Well, I think that young people today want instant gratification. And today, with your IoT coming in, being able to tune the lamp to every Kelvin rating you want, you can do it with your cell phone. It's the lighting industry is still for the future. The future is young people who know how to use all of these tools. And I'm embarrassed in the sense that technically when I grew up, I didn't grow up with that computer, so that I don't own it in the way that many of our young people do. So, but I think the lighting industry is a great industry. I belong to the Illuminating Engineering Society since 1961, and I've been very proud of my association with that.
That's a long run.
Yes, and I've been recognized by the society, also by Randy Reed and the Edison Report. And I feel very good that trying to be a good person and maintaining my word and being diligent in my practices. I get here at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I don't like to change that because I can get more done before 6. And thank goodness I did today, because I didn't really understand the nature of this podcast, so to speak.
I'm an early riser too. I like to get up early and get after it.
I do too.
Yeah. I like to get things done in the morning. It's nice and quiet at my office in the morning usually.
Time to get things done.
Yeah, Greg, we've done 45 minutes. Anything else for Mr. Brown?
I think, one last question. You've had a lot of success. I mean, from the outside looking in, how would you define success?
I think success comes from within. I think you have to be comfortable with people, that you're working to help them. And when you work to help them, you're working to help yourself too. And it's got to be a win-win situation. I don't think in those terms. I think of trying to help other people, and if it helps other people, then it's going to help me too. And I think so that trying to treat other people like you want to be treated is as simply as I can put it. If you treat people well, they will come back and respect you. And you've mentioned some very fine names in our discussion. Certainly Randy Reed and I used to travel together in some ways. He was representing a lighting components company when I first met him, and he worked hard to become president of the IES, and then took on this Edison report. He's done a wonderful job of becoming the voice of the industry.
And he was really good to us, actually. He put our podcast up on his website, and it really was the engine that helped us.
Well, and he's well respected in the industry. He maintains a sense of integrity and comfort that you know that he's not going to do something that's not right for you.
Well, you can be comfortable with us as well. We'll make sure we produce this episode and get you a copy of it over to you so you can.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, give it
I
a
hope
listen.
I've been able to answer your questions.
You sure have.
No, it's been an honor, Mr. Brown. It really has.
Is it?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
I'm glad.
No, we've been talking about for years, even before we started the podcast. We're saying we have to in our time in this business, we have to meet Bill Brown. And we're very glad we did, Mr. Brown. Thank you for coming on our show.
Well, thank you very, very much for having us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, Mike and Greg. Thank you very much.
Keystone Technologies, ladies and gentlemen. Visit keystonetech.com. That's KEYSTONE Tech, TECH.com. Check out their T5HE and T5HO LED tube replacements that bypass the ballast. Come on, man. T5 at keystonetech.com. Also, this is the official podcast of the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, NAILD.org, baby, nail.org. Thank you to Mr. Brown for coming on the show and for his team down at Bill Brown Sales and in ALP. We appreciate you guys. Signing off for now, this is Michael Colligan in the Get a Grip Studios. Thanks for listening.